Chapter 3, The Daddy Framework, Creating a Company to Meet Your Goals. Who's your daddy? During graduate school, I had a course in linear programming. This class taught us the process of finding an optimal solution to a problem. We learned how to find the minimum or maximum possible value given a set of linear constraints. It's not trivial. Linear relationships make it doable. The significantly more challenging situation is when your constraints are non-linear. This was the follow-on course that I dreaded. On the first day of my non-linear programming class, I braced for shock. Once our class got settled in, our professor very quietly said, "Non-linear programming is hard. That's why we're not going to do it. What we're going to do in this class is learn how to avoid it. We're going to take non-linear problems and turn them into easier problems to solve." He was right. We learned how to turn non-linear problems into linear ones that we could easily, again, this is a relative term, mind you, solve. I haven't personally solved a linear or non-linear problem since graduate school. However, I have made a very good living using my non-linear programming professor's strategy. This strategy takes hard, intimidating problems and turns them into easier ones. To do this, I frequently use a business framework or model to guide my actions. I have grown fond of a particular business model that I created and refined during my tenure in the Navy and have extensively utilized in my business career. I call it the Daddy Framework. I've included the Daddy Framework as part of our technical solutions in multiple proposals. Depending upon the constraining page limit, I've written up to 40 pages of dense text regarding this methodologies. In my descriptions, I've included complex mathematical and decision support tools such as multi-objective decision analysis or MODA techniques, as well as modeling and simulation. I've also summarized the Daddy Framework in a paragraph, just to let the government know that we had an approach. Being the kind person that I am, I won't bludgeon you with the extended version. For this kind act of mercy, you may wish to write a 5-star review of this book. Still, I'm certain that some readers are wondering why I'm going off topic to discuss a business model instead of immediately focusing on how to start a company in the federal government market space. Here's your answer. There is not a single repeatable path to business success. If somebody tells you that there is, then simply walk away. If there was a single well-worn path to business success, then wouldn't there be a million signs pointing the way? Wouldn't everyone simply mosey down this path to riches? Each customer, service, product, contract, and personal situation is different. Even if I tried to launch a carbon copy of my previous companies, I could never simply replicate my previous actions and follow the identical path to find success. Things change. Instead of telling you to drop your fishing line in the exact same spot where I caught my fish, I'm going to discuss how to fish in the federal government market space. Neither of us can catch the same fish that I previously caught because it's already mounted on my wall. You need to find your fish, and the Daddy Framework will help you do exactly that. Following a business model like the Daddy Framework helps you think through the complex challenges and turn them into easier, bite-sized tasks. The Daddy Framework Dream Phase. Being an aspiring entrepreneur is tough. Working late at night, constantly being faced with new challenges and things to learn, receiving rejection letters for proposals that consume months of your life to write, and worst of all, being constantly encouraged by friends and family to stop wasting your time chasing some childish fantasy. There were many times that I felt like throwing in the towel and giving up. Even when entrepreneurial success found me, life seemed to get much worse before it started to get better. I vividly recall my worst day as an entrepreneur. I had recently won and fully staffed my first prime contract. I thought I had sufficient savings to cover enough payrolls until I started getting paid by the government. However, I was woefully wrong and faced an upcoming payroll with an empty bank account. Even today, I break out into a cold sweat thinking about that day. I was literally in a fetal position under my desk just mere minutes before my scheduled payroll, hoping, praying that funds would arrive in time so I could pay my employees. What keeps an aspiring entrepreneur going in times like these? Well, it's a dream. A dream is one of the most powerful things known to humanity. A dream can change an entire society. It can create a new country. It can alter the future. On an individual level, a dream will keep you going even when the world turns against you. In fact, your dream is the sole purpose behind the entire daddy exercise. Without a dream, then the other steps are purely academic. However, most dreams have a single damning flaw. Allow me to explain. Prior to launching analytic strategies for the first time in 2003, I received a paperweight with the inscription, "What would you do if you knew you would not fail?" I love this quote because it removes the cloud of self-doubt and fear of failure, allowing you to see your real dreams. However, this quote has an inherent flaw. It encourages people to dream and little else. This quote compelled me to step up to the plate and swing for the fence. What it didn't do was make me realize that getting a base hit was an absolute requirement for the well-being of my family. It allowed me to feel good even when I struck out because I had at least tried. Yet did I really try? Did I do everything within my power to accomplish my dream? Did I really invest emotional equity into having entrepreneurial success? Or was I only going through the motions? This line of thinking will enable you to buy a dollar lottery ticket at your local convenience store and feel good that you tried. The following Christmas, my wife gave me a gift from our kids that changed everything for my company, my family, and myself. It was a hardcover journal with Analytic Strategies LLC painted across the top. In the middle of the cover, there were the handprints of my 1 and 2-year-old sons in paint. Under their tiny handprints read, "We know you can do it." I even choke up now reading this about that day. This gift completely changed my perspective. It turned my entrepreneurial dreams into a binding contract, fully ratified by their tiny believing hands. Opening that gift, I realized that failing to achieve my dreams had real consequences for their future. Now you know why I relaunched and relaunched Analytic Strategies when I had a roadblock. Instead of launching a new company with a different name, I was under contract with my 2 oldest sons to make Analytic Strategies successful. I'm frequently asked what was behind the success of Analytic Strategies. Here's the real answer that few people know. Analytic Strategies succeeded because of the handprints of 2 kids in diapers. It would only fail if I quit. And those tiny handprints took that option away. Plus, as I previously mentioned, I was learning just how expensive diapers were, especially when only used once. It took Analytic Strategies a few attempts to succeed, but there was never any doubt that it was going to make it. Why? Because I invested emotional equity in its success. To be successful, I only had to commit fully and unequivocally. It was simply that easy and that hard. I finally realized that I could not treat my dreams like a wish or a hobby and expect to attain them. I had to force my dreams to come true. If I didn't, my family would suffer the consequences of my failure. I call this dreaming with consequences, and it can help you focus on pursuing your dreams. This is the technique that I use. I write down my goal or dream, then list all the positive and negative consequences associated with it. The positive consequences of a dream are easy and fun to document. The negative ones typically make us feel rather uncomfortable. which is why we often avoid them. However, that's also why focusing on negative consequences is so effective. For example, the consequences of my failure to become a successful entrepreneur included not being able to provide for my family in the manner that I wanted to. I would limit my kids' educational opportunities to only those that I could afford. Being a slave to a 9-to-5 job and paycheck, I would limit the amount of time that I could spend with my family. I was also terrified that I would become a financial burden to my kids when I was no longer able to work and outlive my retirement savings. Now, most motivational speakers, personal coaches, and celebrity gurus adamantly state that positive reinforcement is more effective than considering negative consequences. Although I agree, I also think negative consequences definitely have their own critical role to play. Here's a real example of why I believe this. When I was attempting to get in shape, I tried to go to the gym every other morning. However, the positives of getting in shape weren't always enough to get me out of bed. Even though these positives were significant, including being healthier, feeling better, and living longer. Yet even these positives couldn't get me out to the gym at 6 a.m. every other morning. Then I made appointments with a trainer at 6 a.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I felt so bad when I was a no-show that it compelled me to get my lazy butt out of bed. I didn't want to let my trainer down. I didn't want to be embarrassed by having him call me later in the day and ask me which hospital he should send flowers to, because obviously I must be in a horrific car accident since I missed my training session. Yes, he had a biting sense of humor. The single negative consequence of having an embarrassing phone discussion with a virtual stranger was more effective than all the positives of being healthier and living longer. Now throw in some additional negative consequences like becoming diabetic, having a heart attack, and dying before I see my sons grow up, and suddenly my goal of getting in shape had some teeth. The dream phase simply prompts an initiative that takes you through the entire daddy framework by performing the first D. In regard to the purpose of this book and starting a federal government contracting company, some readers may list dreams such as greater professional fulfillment, financial independence, increased work flexibility, and so on. Don't worry about defining what is or is not reasonable at this point. The subsequent two daddy phases will help you crystallize your dreams into actionable goals. Instead, focus on getting something down on paper with enough consequences, both positive and negative, to ensure you will continue with the remaining daddy phases. I recently read a book by Grant Cardone about his 10X rule. My first takeaway from this book is to expect to commit 10 times more effort than you believe is necessary to be successful. And by experience, Mr. Cardone isn't too far off in his assessment. The second major component of this rule is to set your dream to be about 10 times greater than you ever thought possible. The reason behind this second component is to motivate you to do all the work necessary to pursue it. Dream big. Having said this, you can't be lazy and just say that you want to make as much money as possible or that you want to become a billionaire. Here's why. The saying, if you shoot for the moon and miss, you will still land amongst the stars, does not apply to people trying to become a billionaire. If you shoot to become a billionaire and miss, you don't land amongst the millionaires. Instead, you land amongst the bankrupt. There is an optimal strategy for every goal. Allow me to explain. If your goal is to go across the street, then walking is your best strategy. If your goal is to go across town, then driving a car is your best strategy. If your goal is to go across country, then taking a plane is likely your best strategy. Finally, if your goal is to go across the solar system, then flying a spaceship is your best strategy. Now consider this. Just because a spaceship can take you the furthest does not mean it's the best strategy for all travel-related goals. In fact, it's the worst strategy for the other goals.